Hey, first of all, tonight I'm going to conclude the We Have a King series. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Jonathan Dearman. I'm the young adults pastor here at The Rock. And tonight, thank you. Wow, look at that. Tonight we're going to conclude the We Have a King series. But I think it's going to be maybe the briefest message that you've ever heard tonight. It's going to be a short one. Because before we do that, we have some family business to talk about tonight. And by the way, tonight I was going to preach the final message. I was going to call it part 6, but I hear it's part 7 because I saw a clip from Pastor Melissa. Is she in the room? I heard she brought part 6 last week. I heard it was so good. I got to watch one of the shorts on our Instagram, and it was so powerful. But tonight I will conclude that, but we do have some family business to attend to tonight. So if you're here tonight and it's your first time, welcome to the family. This is a family meeting that we're having here. And I want to talk about a role transition taking place. And I want to walk you through a little timeline, actually, a little story of God's faithfulness, and hopefully to express well what he's done in this last season and to express this transition well. I can't hit everything, so I'll just hit the bullet points tonight. There's so many things in between each point that I could go deep on, and I'm not going to because it's just simply too long to talk about how much God has been faithful. However, in the beginning of 2014, God radically changed my life. He changed my life in a way that I knew I would never go back. I was not living for him. I was living somewhat for him, mostly for me, and kind of trying to add God on top of my own life and my own decisions. And in 2014, he captured my heart, and he showed me that his word is true, that when he says, if you will lay down your life and run after him, you'll actually find the life that he has. And so in 2014, God changed my life. Right after he changed my life, I became a volunteer youth leader at a small campus of The Rock in Lake Elsinore. That campus is still going today. It's still much smaller than here. If you were to look at the size of the room, it's probably like the sanctuary is probably like that little corner area over there, a little longer. It could seat about 50 or 60 chairs in there total. And so Marlene and I became the youth leaders out there. And we started a youth ministry out there. We started it with the first week we had 7 youth come. The second week we had 5 youth come. And I guess 2 didn't like it, so it just kind of went down right after the first week. And then God started doing some amazing things. And we started seeing about 30 to 40 youth coming every week. And then to our shock, Marlene and I were asked to become the campus pastors of The Rock in Lake Elsinore. That satellite campus, we prayed. We felt like the Lord said to do it. And we did it for 4 years. We were out there. And then in 2018, at a rock conference that Marlene and I were attending, the Lord spoke something to me that I didn't expect. The Lord said to me, and I had settled in that moment, that at that time, that I would spend the rest of my life in Lake Elsinore if that's what God was calling me to do. I'm just going to do what he said to do. And in 2018, the Lord said to me at a rock conference that he was calling us to come back to Anaheim and to partner with the Anaheim campus with the young adults ministry. And it was a big deal to me because God had done so much out there in Lake Elsinore. God had taught me so much. I'd learned a lot from successes. I learned way more from all the failures, all the things that could have and should have done better. And the Lord was so gracious. And yet he whispered that to us at a rock conference that he was calling us back to this campus with an emphasis on partnering with the young adults. I asked the Lord to confirm this, and he did. Actually, the next day, a lady came up to me and said, hey, so this is going to sound weird, but I had a dream about you. And she said, and this was actually a few months ago, and I knew I was supposed to say something, but God just told me I need to say something right now. And she said, basically, the point of the dream, she laid out the dream, and she said, basically, what I feel like God is saying is that this campus in Lake Elsinore is not the long-term thing for you, that he's not going to keep you there for very long. And I knew that was the Lord confirming what it is that he had said to me the day before, calling us back to Anaheim. So I presented this to my parents, who are not only my parents, they are also my pastors. They are also my bosses. They are also my dear friends. And I presented this to them and asked them what they thought. And they prayed about it. And I said, I feel like the Lord's calling us back to the Anaheim campus to come back and serve however's needed and to partner with young adults. At that time, my mom, Pastor Kimberly, was the young adults pastor. And they came back, they prayed, and they came back and said that they had felt, and my mom had felt like the Lord had told her a while ago that Marlene and I were going to become the young adult pastors. And so she felt like this was a yes. And so we came back, and I was not expecting to lead and be the young adult pastor. I was just doing what the Lord had said and expecting to come and support however the Lord was saying, but the Lord was calling me to be the pastor, and that's what my mom felt, and I felt like the Lord was saying to do it. So then I had a problem, which was in Lake Elsinore. I thought, Lord, who can be the next campus pastor out here? And so I asked the Lord, just as a side note, this is how we have to live our lives. Lord, we don't know what to do. We may think we know what to do, but Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. But he directs your paths in response to you acknowledging him. He doesn't just direct your paths just because. He directs your path when you acknowledge him. So I acknowledged the Lord. Said, Lord, who's supposed to be the next campus pastor in Lake Elsinore? Because the Lord was doing something at that time. In fact, well, I'll leave that for another time. But the Lord said to ask Pastor Jeremy Martinez. He wasn't a pastor at the time. He was someone who was partnering with us in the ministry. The Lord had said to ask him to be the next campus pastor. Well, I hadn't asked him yet, and nobody knew about this transition except for my wife and my parents, and maybe one other person on the executive team here. And yet, later that week, I think it was maybe the next week, Jeremy came up to me and said, hey, he said, just so you know, I'm going to be quitting my job at the end of the year to focus fully on the ministry. And I responded to him and said, hey, you know, I don't have a paid position to offer you. I don't have a staff role here. And he said, you know, I know that. He said, I don't expect that. He said, I just know that God's called me to quit this job that I've worked at for 18 years to focus on the ministry. I don't know how he's going to provide financially, but it's what the Lord said. And it was so cool to watch that was 1 week after God had told me he's supposed to be the next campus pastor. And so he did that, and I let him quit without telling him that we were going to have a position for him. I first let him quit, and so he went over there and he quit, and he was serious, and he had worked there 18 years. So he put in his 2 weeks, and after he had put in his 2 weeks and let them know he was going to quit, then I let him know, hey, I presented this. At that time, it wasn't approved, but during this time of him quitting, I had presented to the leadership of the Rock overall for him to be the next campus pastor, and they approved. And so I got to tell him that, and he got to take on that role and come on staff as the campus pastor in Lake Elsinore, to which he's still doing to this day. So fast forward to 2019. This was about 4.5 years ago. My wife and I did become the young adults pastor. It's been primarily me that's been the young adults pastor. We have 4 kiddos, so she's been running with them, and she's now the kids pastor, but that's why you don't see her here too much. But her heart is ministry, and her heart's always been to partner with me. And even the times that I am here, she is partnering with me, because the only way that I'm able to be here is because she's with our kiddos tonight while I'm here. And that's great partnership right there too. God has moved mightily in Beyond over the last 4.5 years. He's done things way beyond me, things that I look back and I just feel grateful to the Lord to even be a part of what he's done here in moving. Since 2019, I've had about 14 different roles here at the church, and that's not a joke. I'm not kidding. Just to list a few as example, after I came here and became the young adults pastor, I then became the next gen pastor, then the assistant Anaheim campus pastor, the blueprints director, the online director, the Anaheim lead campus pastor, the ministry streams director, and the advancement director. Those are about half of the roles that I played. But there's been one role that has not changed, and it's the only role that's not changed, and that's the young adults pastor. And I felt like the Lord's been carrying that through this entire time. And it's been the only role that hasn't changed, even though one time I tried to change it. I'm going to confess to you. One time years ago, maybe about 2.5 years ago, when I had stepped into being the assistant Anaheim campus pastor and still being the young adults pastor, I had proposed to my father, who's again my boss and my pastor, that I no longer be the young adult pastor. And the reason why was not because I didn't have a heart for it. It was the opposite, actually. It was because I felt like I wasn't doing it justice, and I felt like it needs focus, and I felt like I was not giving it the attention that it needed. And I knew that young adults, you all, have such big callings on your life. And by the way, your calling is not to come and watch ministry happen. You are the ministers. You're called to ministry. And I knew that God was calling us to activate young adults. And I felt like with the various roles, I think I had 3 different roles at that time, and had I think either we were about to have our 4th child or we just had our 4th child. And I just felt like the focus wasn't there. So I proposed to my dad that I no longer be the young adults pastor. And he graciously said no. He said, you know, I understand what you're saying, but I feel like you're supposed to still be in this role. And I thanked him later, about a year later, I thanked him deeply. And I said, thank you, because I know in hindsight that my assignment was not done yet. And even though I felt overwhelmed and like I couldn't do it. You know, the Lord loves to move through people that don't feel like they have what it takes, and he loves to move through them if they'll lean in. And so I ended up thanking him for saying no, because I know now that my assignment was not done yet at that point. Fast forward to last year, maybe about a year and a half ago, even though I knew my assignment wasn't done here, I also knew that the Lord was calling me to take some steps back from carrying the operational weight and load here at Beyond. Many of you know this, especially those of you that serve or team members or team leaders, that this doesn't just happen. We don't just show up and look, everything's organized and ready and events just kind of happen. People have to lean in and do these things and make sure they're done right and well. And I knew the Lord was calling me to take steps back from being the operational leader and leading all the leaders and teams. And this was primarily to do two things. This was, number one, to make room for others to step up and lead. I felt like the Lord was saying that there are some voids that I'm leaning into, and because I'm leaning into them, there's not room for others to step up. And the Lord was saying, make room for others to step up and lead. And so that's one reason why. And the second reason why was I knew the Lord was calling me to increase my focus on the other roles God had placed me in at that time. And so I did. So about a little over a year ago, I announced to our team, our leadership team here at Beyond, which is maybe 14, 15 people, different leaders, and then those leaders oversee team members. I had announced to them about a year and a half ago that I was feeling like the Lord was calling me to take some steps back operationally and to not be in as much of the day-to-day leadership of what happens here at Beyond, but to pastor from a little bit of a distance. And I expressed to them that I felt like the Lord was saying there was much opportunity for these leaders to step up and lead and these team members to lean into. And boy, did they do it. Over the last year, I've watched people that have so much in them. I've watched things come out of them. I've watched God use them. I've watched God use you. I'm talking about you all in this room. And I've got to watch that over the last year or so. And so many of our leaders could confirm this. Especially, well, those that have been leaders with us for a long time could confirm both the previous phase and this phase, but all of them could confirm this phase, which is that there was a time when I was leading every team leader meeting. I was in every vision meeting, every strategy meeting. I was in follow-up calls and follow-up tasks and assignments and working with all the leaders. But the last year and a half, I haven't been doing almost any of that. And our leaders would know, those leaders that are in here that are in our leadership meetings would know that I haven't been in there. And it's been led primarily by other people, and it hasn't been me. And yet, Beyond has flourished in some ways that are significantly better than when I was stepping in and leading in my own way and leading strongly, even though I believe that was the Lord for a season. One of the great things that I've loved watching over the last 6 months or so is that the community here at Beyond, which is in our heart to see community increase, has happened from your own hearts. And what I mean by that is we haven't planned a Beyond event. I think we've done like one Beyond community event this year, maybe two. And yet there's been a lot of gatherings happening all over the place. And that's because you all are planning these gatherings. And if you have not been a part of those gatherings yet, if you're like, I haven't even heard of those gatherings, and you want to, if you just go and ask enough people, they'll get you in the chat so you can start coming too. They're open-handed like that, which is part of our heart, is not to be closed off. And so I've watched God do things here that have been so amazing over the last year and a half. And I've watched leaders flourish and the Lord move in some mighty ways. And it's been so great to see the Lord's call leaders and to see our team step up so greatly. And this all leads up to about a month and a half ago, where seemingly out of nowhere, I felt like the Lord say to me that it's time for me to transition out of Beyond. Now, that was a big deal for me because even though I haven't been here as much lately, my heart has always been here. And it's been one of the greatest privileges I've ever had to be the young adult pastor here. And so that weighed on me. And so I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, would you confirm this? Because I just want to do what you're saying, God. I don't want to overstay anything that you're calling me out of. I don't want to not go into something you're calling me into. And so I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, would you confirm what it is that you're saying? And he did. He's good like that. About 2 days later, we were in a meeting and we were talking with the leadership, our senior pastors, Pastors Jerry and Kimberly. I believe Pastor Tammy was in there, and Pastor Tristan, I think Pastor Anna and Nessa Hasbun. And we were talking about structure and roles And one of the things that came up with our new structure that we have is we have this whole new thing called Jesus Disciple, which is what we believe is the discipleship that we believe God has called us to spread around the world, all over the place for free with no cost, to see people's lives transformed all over the world. It's a big vision that we have, and it's big things that God has called us to do with it, and we know this. And we believe that God is calling us to partner with other ministries to equip them. One of our favorite things to answer when other ministries, when we talk to them and we say, hey, we have this discipleship system that we've been working on and created that you can actually customize, and you can customize it for your own ministry and use it. One of our favorite things to respond to them is when they ask, how much does it cost? And we get to tell them nothing. It's free. Just use it. Just use it and let the Lord use it to transform the people that you work with. And in fact, we tell them that they can even replace all the faith builder teachings that we call them faith builders. They're teachings people listen to during the week. You can replace the ones we have with your own. We're not looking for credit. We're not looking for people to know that we are the ones that developed this. We're just looking for people to be changed. That's what we're looking for. And for people to know who the Lord is and feel the transformative power that he brings. And so this is a big one. And so we laid out this structure. And while we laid out this structure, we had laid out a role called Jesus Disciple Advancement Director, which is a big task. It's a role that's supposed to be somebody helping to oversee this vision that we have of Jesus Disciple being spread all over the world for free, again, to bless people. And ultimately, when it's spreading all over the world, what that means is people are being transformed, set free, discipled, experiencing the love of the Lord, and used by God in mighty ways. And so when we were in that meeting, this is about 2 days after I felt like the Lord had said randomly, it's time to step out of Beyond. And I had asked the Lord, would you confirm this? And 2 days later, I'm in this meeting, and we have this role, and there's a blank next to that role. And we prayed, and as a leadership team, we prayed and said, who should lead this particular area and this role of Jesus Disciple Advancement? And after we finished praying, somebody said, I feel like Jonathan's supposed to lead it. And my dad responded and said, no, he's incompetent and arrogant. No, I'm just kidding. No, he responded and said, he said, I feel right about that, and I feel like that is the right thing, but I don't think he can do that and young adult pastor and the other roles that he's in. This requires focus. And I knew that was the Lord in my heart confirming, this is why I said it's time to step out, is because he's calling me into something new. And he's calling Beyond into something new. It's not a loss in any area. The Lord's calling some great things. And so I knew that was the confirmation. I knew the Lord is saying, this is why I said this to you. This is why I prepared you. Because otherwise we would have gotten to that moment and they would have suggested my name and I would have said, well, I'm in Beyond. And so that, maybe that's not an option, but the Lord had prepared me for that. So he confirmed it, and I'll say this, while I wrestled with whether or not to step down from Beyond, because it's just a hard decision in my heart, honestly. God's done, like I said, he's done so much, and I've been just abundantly blessed to be a part of what God's done here. While that was a wrestle, that decision to come to on the inside, determining who would replace me as the young adults pastor was not a wrestle. It was one of the easiest decisions that I've ever made, and I knew what the Lord was saying. And let me back up just about a year before this moment. About a year ago, I felt like about a year ago, the Lord had asked me to ask Jared to take a year off of school in a college. Now, he was going to college. He was heading into his last year of college. And I wrestled with that because I'm like, Lord, he's heading into his last year. I don't want to impose that and say like, hey, take a year off school. I want to let him. But I felt like the Lord said, you need to ask him. You need to ask him to take a year off of school. This was right about a year ago. And I didn't even have a position for him. I just felt like the Lord had said he was already on staff assisting me in some ways. But I felt like the Lord said, ask him to take a year off of school to lean into the ministry. And so I just out of obedience to the Lord, I did. I asked him, I said, I feel like the Lord is calling me to ask you to take a year off of school to lean into the ministry. And he appropriately, the conversation as we talked looked like something like, in what way would we lean in? And we left that conversation basically saying, I don't know exactly how you would lean in, but I feel like the Lord's saying for you to lean in. And so he went back and prayed. Well, while he was praying back there, we have a great man of God whose name is Marco. Many of you, I'm sure, remember Marco, who was the assistant Beyond leader here for a while. While he was praying about taking a year off of school, Marco had come to me and he said, hey, out of what felt like a surprise, it was a surprise at the moment, but it was the Lord moving things. he said, I feel like God has called me to go lean into another area. And I feel like God has called me to step out of this role and to go lean in to this area over here. And the Lord was calling him to something new. And then the Lord said, I knew the Lord was saying, this is why I called Jared to do this. And so Jared came back to me and said, yes, I will take a year off of school to focus on the ministry, not knowing what it was for yet. And then that's when I told him, well, guess what? Like 2 days ago, Marco just came and told me that he felt like he was supposed to step back. I need someone to help me run this thing and lead this young adults ministry. And so he did. He stepped up and he stepped into this. And I've gotten to watch him lead in such a miraculous way. He's one of the most integrous, gifted, pure-hearted young men I've ever met. And I mean that, and called by God. I know him really well off the platform, which is always a sign of a good leader when they reflect their demeanor the same way off the platform as they do on the platform. And that's who he is. He is generous and integrous and pure-hearted and deeply desires to run after the Lord, even at opportunities where he could instead get more money, has chosen not to and desires not to go that route, to do whatever God's saying and to lean into whatever the Lord's saying. And so at this time, I'm announcing tonight, obviously, that I feel like the Lord is calling me to take a step back, but I'm also announcing that we know that the Lord is calling our next young adult pastor at The Rock to be Jared Nitzel. And in a couple weeks, in 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to take some time and we're going to pray over him and install him. Like officially, we all want to pray and install him, and that's when he will become the official young adults pastor, but we're announcing it tonight. But I do want to just give him a moment to just come up and just share briefly what's on his heart and on his mind. So would you clap it up one more time for Pastor Jared?
There we go. No, first of all, I'm so honored to be trusted by the Lord to do this, but also trusted by Pastor Jonathan and Pastor Kimberly and Pastor Jerry to do this. When he first asked me to do this, to be honest, I was not excited. I was like, bro, that means more responsibility. That means more of this. And I really had to go and pray, go in my throne room and pray before the Lord. But I know that the Lord really spoke to me, and he said, trust me and complete the work, that there's an assignment for young adults to, one, encounter his presence, to be activated in their calling, to be discipled, and also to have community, to like do it with people. And I feel like that's the heartbeat of Beyond, to encounter God's presence and to have fun and to do it with people. And I feel like that's the direction that we're headed. And with worship and the way that we're doing things, I feel like, Jesus is so real, and I'm like I said before, I want to shake you guys and show you like, no, but he really is real, and give him a chance. But I also do want to honor Pastor Jonathan. You completely have changed my life. You asked me about 3 years ago what was it, like 3 or 4? I don't even know. A long time ago, he had prayed, and he had asked me to assist him. And I was, fresh out of high school, and I was fresh in this walk, and I literally knew nothing about ministry. I barely grew up in church. And being under your wing and the way that you've led me and the way that you've taught me to pay attention to details and the way that you've taught me to be confident in what God is saying, and always, like you said, ask God for wisdom, always ask God for what to do next. And the way that you've led me, all that I'm doing is reflecting what you've taught me. All that I'm doing is reflecting what you and the Lord has taught me over these past 5 years, 6 years walking with God. I'm simply just reflecting all the things that you've imparted in me and that I've instilled in me. So I want to honor Pastor John. Can we clap it up for Pastor Jonathan? Thank you so much. But he's amazing. I'm so excited now. I wasn't excited earlier, but I'm excited now to do this. I really am. I got energy. I'm excited, and I'm ready to run this with you guys. I really don't see me doing all the work. I really see each and every single one of you guys partnering with this, right? Because like he said, we're called to do the work of the ministry. We're called to go out and do it ourselves, not wait. You don't have to have a title. You don't have to be a pastor to move and be who you're called to be. So I want to encourage you guys, it's not just me. it's every single one of you guys in this room to play your part and to do the work of the ministry and be who you're called to be. And it's fun. Like, it's joyful. Like, I was just going crazy. I was sweating and like my heart was racing because I just love Jesus that much and he deserves that praise. And he's shown up countless times in my life because I've given him a chance. I was in a relationship for 3 years and I gave that up because I knew God, you had asked me. And I know that obedience to you is so much better and being in your will is so much better. I remember praying about dropping school. I had a year left to graduate, like I'm about to get my bachelor's degree, like I'm about to like get it all like in and he asked me to pray about laying aside school. And I'm like, this guy's tripping. Like, no way. Like, ain't no way I put all this time and this focus. I know some of y'all in college, but it's a lot. It's a lot of work. But I felt like God told me, you need to lay it aside and I need you to focus on ministry. And every time that I was at a crossroad, I chose to obey God. And God has done exceedingly and abundantly in my life because of my obedience to him. And I'm telling you guys have access to that too. It's not just me, I'm not special, but you have access to say yes to him and just watch him move in your life. Sometimes it takes a step of faith and God will meet the measure in which we step out. So I want to encourage you guys to partner with me as we jump into this new season with Beyond. I know that God is doing some amazing things in young adults, and I'm excited to do it with you guys, but I love you guys so much.
So like I said, 2 weeks from tonight, we will officially install Jared as the young adult pastor. Until then, I'm in charge. I want you to know that. Now listen, also just to note, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving far. You'll still see me around. I'll still be here on this campus and you will still see me. So I'm not going too far. But he said not when he's in charge. No, we'll see. No, I'm just kidding. So we'll do that. And 2 weeks from tonight, we will pray and install Jared. And I have to tell you this, I've been through several transitions in my life. I've watched many and I've been a part of some. And the Lord has like strategically positioned this one right. Even in just that there's been a season that God had called me to take a step back anyway. And so much, it's not like with our leaders that they're going to experience some big hit to the way that they flow. They've kind of flowed without me in a lot of ways anyway. And so I feel like the Lord's really orchestrated this well, and he's going to do something. And let me just say this, and then we're going to get into probably about a 7-minute message, and I'm not kidding. I know that the best days of Beyond are not behind us. They're in front of us. I know that God has called Pastor Jared and you all, not just him. He cannot do it alone. I could never do it alone. If I can't do it alone, he certainly can't. No, I'm just kidding. No. No, listen, he can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. I know that God is not saying that the best days of Beyond are behind us. The Lord is not doing this transition because he wants less strength to move forward and beyond. He wants more in this season. And he would do a better job leading in this season than I would because he's called to do it in this season. And I'm not called to do it in this season. So he's the appointed one for this season, for this era. And I know that the Lord is calling us to go way, way beyond where it's ever gone before. And here's what that means. I always want to clarify what that means. That does not mean that this room is more filled necessarily. Does not mean that we have to put out more and more chairs. We believe when Beyond goes far, what that actually means is we're talking about people's lives being changed. We're talking about people that are addicted being set free. We're talking about people that are going through life trying to cope with anxiety and depression, being delivered from that. We're talking about people that don't know the love of Jesus, that may feel like nobody's there for them, nobody loves them, that they experience the love of the Lord. We're talking about people being restored, people being discipled, and then living a new life with Jesus and passing that along and discipling others. That's what we're talking about when we say that God's going to take Beyond, way beyond where it's ever gone before. And it's going to go there. And let me say this too. Thankfully, Beyond has never been about me or one person anyway. It's always been about the Lord, and it's always been about the people that God's trying to reach, which is you. And the Lord is still here, and I hope you're still going to be here too. I think most of you will be. And in a couple weeks, we'll share some of the vision of what God's saying in this season. But I want to ask you tonight even, just as a final thought as we transition into this brief message, I want to ask you to partner with Beyond in this next season, because I know that part of what the Lord is leading us into and has led us into over the last year and a half is for less of one person to do the work of the ministry and more everybody doing it together. And by the way, you doing the work of the ministry does not just mean, in fact, like, it doesn't just mean that you're willing to serve on Wednesday night. That's like a small part of maybe what you're called to. What you're called to do, you're called to reach your neighbors, called to reach your family. You're called to preach the gospel, to make disciples everywhere. That's what we're all called to do. And the Bible never, ever states that only few are supposed to do the work of the ministry. We are all called by God to do the work of the ministry. And in fact, the Bible says that he gives leaders the role to equip the saints, which are the people of God, to do the work of the ministry. The leader's role is not to do all the work of the ministry. And I'm not just talking about in church, in a church building. I'm talking about doing the ministry, like going out and preaching to people, praying over people, seeing them set free, healed, discipled. It's not supposed to be the leaders that are called to do all that. They can't. The ratio of people to leaders is way too big. It's all of us, all hands on deck. If you're a believer, you are on assignment from the Lord. In fact, actually,